slow. These wings have yet to unfold, and I'm still healing from the last escape, crawling from the darkest place. But I believe that you could break the mold. Isn't it funny how I'm already back to where I first fell in? Thought you say me too, shadows haunt you, and you've been where I've been. Isn't it funny how I'm already back to where I first fell in? Thought you say me too, shadows haunt you, so tell me, where do we begin? You can keep us both afloat when we're lost out on the coast. Just bring me what I need. Bring me what I need. I tell myself, take it slow. These wings have yet to unfold, and I'm still healing from the last escape, crawling from the darkest place. But I believe that you could break the mold. Isn't it funny how I'm already back to where I first fell in? But you say me too, shadows haunt you, so tell me, where do we begin? You can keep us both afloat when we're lost out on the coast. Just bring me what I need. Bring me what I need. I tell myself, take it slow. These wings have yet to unfold, and I'm still healing from the last escape, crawling from the darkest place. But I believe that you could break the mold.
Get up. We want you to get on your feet. Stand up, stand up. Come on, get loose with the heat. Right now, right now. Think your bodies when you like that. So get the fuck up.
you to know me, 'cause I know then you'll see you can be true, you can be true. I want you to see what I see in us, something so real, something so real. I want you to see that this is a love that we both feel, that we both feel. And how will we ever know if the love will ever grow without trying, without trying? And how will we ever see if we are meant to be? It's terrifying, it's terrifying.
everyone, and welcome to our June education program. I'm glad you could all be here today. I'm Katie Schultz, your MPI-PHL president, and I wanted to give a big shout out to all of our CMM and CMP folks who are on the program for our special luncheon to you guys. And next year, yes, we will be live. I also wanted to thank our strategic partners today, Court, Dynable, and Synergetic. Without these folks, we could have not put on this program, and I really do thank you all for your support. And of course, our presidential partner, Kalahari Resorts. They've been a really big part of helping us be able to provide all this great content for you all throughout these challenging times. So I will send it over to Kelly and Nikki, and enjoy.
Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for that great introduction. And thank you to everybody who has joined us today. We're so glad that you could be here. We have been navigating this next normal for the past 3 months, taking Zoom meetings and calls in our bedrooms and our home offices. As we go through to the next phase, there are things that we can do to potentially increase the quality and production value of our meetings and events, and potentially even create hybrid meetings, and then once we're able to do so, live meetings. And again, in the meantime, we've kind of been in our bedrooms. I'm wondering, Kelly, let's maybe not do this from our homes today.
Yeah, do you think so?
How about I come over to your house?
Yeah, come on over. Let's do it together.
Yeah, we'll do it live. So just kidding, I was not in my bedroom. We did the fake out. That was my bedroom done virtually. And we're here in Synergetic Studios to kind of show you some of the possibilities as we navigate the next normal and move into this next phase and plan meetings and events in this new environment. So before we do that, we want to kind of address the fact that there are ways to engage your virtual audience, even though you're no longer in person. So one of the ways that we can do that, and I'd like to thank everybody who joined us through our Zoom chat. So we usually host a CMM CMP luncheon live and in person. And we were figuring out in this next normal how we could recognize our CMMs and CMPs, those are certified meeting professionals and certified meeting managers, to thank them for their service and their accomplishments and recognize everything that they've done. So one of the things that we did, and one of the things that you can do when you're doing a virtual event, is to create a private chat where everybody can enjoy one another and do that networking aspect, but do that together in a virtual room as opposed to in person. So thank you to everybody who joined us today from the CMM CMPs. Now we're going to talk a little bit about how we produce this and how you might be able to take some of the tips that we did and incorporate them into your next event. So Kelly, one of the things that I was hearing in some of the questions that people asked in advance were, how do you ensure the safety? I mean, we're not wearing masks, right?
Right.
So how can we ensure the safety of our performers who are going to be producing these events? What are some of the things that you did?
Absolutely. And hi, everybody out there. Thanks for tuning in. Glad to be here with you, Nikki. So yes, we are here without masks, but we are properly distanced here in the studio. And leading up to this, we came in for rehearsals and meetings, and we were wearing masks and keeping our distance and taking all of the precautions. Synergetic would take our temperatures every time we'd come in, yesterday for rehearsal, today when we showed up. So all of that has been happening and is in place as a precaution. And then also from a furniture standpoint, this is some court furniture here that we're sitting on. We have some protocols and procedures that we've implemented nationally to make sure that we can keep our clients and our staff safe. Yeah, so this video here is of our driver, Kenny, who delivered the furniture here a while back. And what we're doing is we're disinfecting the furniture with a hydrogen peroxide solution that is odorless, will not damage the product, and disinfects within minutes. So it really checks all the boxes. There's that cleaner right there that we're using, again, on a national level. And so what we do is disinfect it before it leaves the warehouse and then disinfect it again upon delivery. There he is spraying there. And that way everything is safe and ready to go.
That's great. And so I think that this is also something that people can do if you're doing a hybrid or live event to reassure your attendees of some of the safety protocols. Maybe take some of that B-roll, put it on your event website in a special section, and direct any attendees to that so that they can potentially see some of the precautions before they've even gotten there. And definitely something to ask your vendors and suppliers before you even start the process of planning that event, what their safety protocols are, and if they have any one-sheet sheets or.
And a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is how do we set up our meetings virtually, hybrid, and in person eventually in a way that makes attendees feel comfortable with the situation. And that really starts in the beginning of the process with cleaning and things like that. So any vendor should be prepared to share that with planners.
Sure. And let's talk about some of the setups, right? We're doing this in a broadcast style.
Yes. Yeah, so I think that is the next phase of this. So we have, like you said, been doing Zoom calls and everybody's in their home office or their bedroom or their living room. And the next phase, I think, really will be this more TV broadcast style that we're testing out here today. Whether it's a news desk style setup or more of a talk show or fireside chat like we're doing today, it gives a more polished professional presentation, especially if you have speakers at an executive level.
Sure. And so what are some of the things that we can be doing for hybrid meetings, right? So as we're able to invite people into our studios, maybe do some engagement with a live audience and a virtual audience, what are some of the things that we can be thinking about?
Right, so yes, after virtual, strictly virtual, we'll start talking about hybrid meetings, and you'll have a partially virtual audience, partially in person, a smaller group in person at first with, that may be growing over time. So obviously you want to make sure the speakers are physically distanced as we are here today, whether that's in a hotel ballroom or in a studio. And you want to make sure that the staging that you have set up works for the folks both in person and looks right on screen for the virtual audience. So it kind of has to speak to both audiences at once. So that's just something to keep in mind. And from a technology standpoint, we're already seeing this with a lot of the webinars that we're attending, but they're being recorded for distribution post-event. So that's going to be a best practice that I think we'll see going forward. In the room, for the in-person folks, additional screens because sightlines are going to be a bit more challenging as folks are spaced apart in the room. Attendee engagement, Q&A, no more passing around the microphone from person to person. That engagement will happen via apps and mobile phones. Again, in the room, the music volume, something that a lot of us may not have thought of. You can't really have loud music blaring in the background when people are speaking from 6 feet apart or through masks. So all those things are things to keep in mind. And budgets for live and virtual attendees should be kind of almost considered like two separate budgets, I think, because you're catering to two different audiences, even though the content is the same. As we start to monetize hybrid events and virtual events, we have to think about the costs that go into putting together that presentation. And there might be a different price for the in-person versus the hybrid.
I think it's really interesting. One of the things that we talk about throughout the CMP study group that our chapter holds is that the goals and objectives of your event are paramount, and all the decisions about the event flow from there. It makes sense that the goals and objectives of a live event or an in-person event would be very different from those of a virtual event, and therefore, if you're doing a hybrid event, it's almost two separate events just happening concurrently.
Yes, the principle that your goals and objectives matter the most has not changed.
Right, right.
That does not change in the world that we're living in, just the way we apply the guidelines that we're being given is what will change.
Sure. And I think one of the other things to consider too is the idea of timelines do change. I know for us, it was a lot more on the front end because as a speaker, when you have a live event and it's something that you've done as a presenter, you get into a bit of a flow and when you walk into a room, you can wing it a little bit because the setup is similar to what you've done before. The room set, everything is familiar. But with a virtual event or a studio, the way you react on camera is going to be very different than the way you react on a stage with a live audience. So I definitely recommend at least one, if not two. We did 3 dress rehearsals to get used to the space.
Yes, we did. And I know folks probably have a lot of questions about virtual platforms and how much does this kind of thing cost and some of the frequently asked questions. And I think Jason from Synergetic, the owner of Synergetic, put together a short video on some FAQs about virtual events. So we'll go check out that video and come right back.
All right, so while the team resets for their next segment, I wanted to take 90 seconds to answer 3 questions that have been asked to MPI about virtual events. Number 1, they were asked how much lead time should be accounted for. We've been telling our customers from the first phone call to the actual broadcast should be roughly 2 months. That gives everyone enough time for decisions to be made and to produce a great looking broadcast. Number 2, lots of questions about budget. We've seen our prospects a little surprised about the pricing that they are seeing. We've had a lot of explaining on why and what it really takes to make a virtual broadcast successful. A bulk of that budget is spent on people. These broadcasts are way more technician driven. We have done a few where we've had 10 technicians for just a 1-hour broadcast, plus the rehearsal. So you're most likely going to find pricing on a per hour basis for things like helping to manage a Zoom call, and then package pricing for a creative, fully produced broadcast. I would consider $5,000 to $20,000 as a good starting point for a fully produced broadcast. We should all remember, though, that the value chain has not been established yet, and customers don't know what they're buying. So it's going to take some time before that chain is established. And lastly, they wanted me to tell you something you may not know. Virtual events need to be produced. You have to plan out when you are going to show a graphic slide. When do you want to do a picture-in-a-picture? Maybe you want 4 presenters on the screen at the same time. It all comes down to someone deciding what the viewer is going to see. We've been pushing our customers to think about hiring producers who have experience with TV and viewer engagement. A producer can really help you plan out a great broadcast. And with that, let's send it back to the Synergetic stage.
Jason, thank you so much. I know budget, all of those things were things that we got a lot of questions about. It seems like there is such a large range. But again, goes back to goals and objectives and what you want. And thank you so much for sharing with us some of the back-end technology considerations. Synergetic is definitely someone you can call if you have additional questions. And if you have a preferred AV partner, find out what they're doing as well.
All great points.
So moving on to when we can do the next normal. And again, I'd like to stress at this point that neither Kelly nor I are medical professionals. We don't pretend to be. And so anything that we share with you today is not to be taken as medical advice, or these are just suggestions for when we're able to meet in person. We don't know exactly when that's going to be. And we strongly recommend that you check the CDC and the WHO and even your state and local websites to see what the current guidelines are for meeting in person. But eventually we'll be able to.
Yes.
And when we do, it's good to have these ideas in our back pocket. So tell us a little bit about some of the venue considerations and the ways that we can use furnishings to really address those.
Absolutely. So as you can see behind us here, we have a little visual representation of what we think registration and kind of wellness checks might look like as we move into in-person events. Again, this is just a suggestion that Court is making, but we have some plexiglass screens shown here that kind of divide the line. That is going to be something that Court is going to have available, and people can reach out to me for more information about that. The floor decals that are placed 6 feet apart to keep people properly distanced, and then you've got the plexiglass also on top of the actual desk to protect the person who's administering the wellness checks. And they have an entrance that kind of goes up to the desk and then exits out a separate way so that the people coming back through don't pass those who are still waiting in line. So all of that flow management, and we'll talk about that a lot today, flow management, but that's what that photo or that rendering represents there. But generally speaking, we've been hearing this a lot. We're going to see 40 to 50% capacity at venues, most likely. You know, we're going to need a higher number of square feet for the number of people that we have in the room to maintain the proper physical distancing.
All of our old equations go out the window, right?
Exactly, exactly. So, and then, like I said, the wellness area for temperature checks are potentially, if anybody were to start feeling unwell during the meeting, you want to have a designated place for them to go that they know about. Masks being required, I think we'll see at a minimum. Hand sanitizer, hand washing stations, disinfectant wipes, all of those types of things I think are going to be prevalent at the meetings. And I know most hotels and venues are thinking about that, and they're going to have hand sanitizing stations, enhanced sanitation procedures, additional cleaning staff on hand to make sure that things are wiped down between groups. Also shifting to outdoor spaces where possible. We're in the season for it here in Philly now. As we get into the fall and into next winter, you know, that shifts based on your location. But you know, where you can get more airflow, any rooms where you have windows or the ability to open up to the outside is always preferable too.
Yeah, and I think that this is a good time to point out, we've always talked about viewing our vendors and our suppliers as strategic partners, and I think now more than ever, that becomes even more important because knowing who is responsible for what with respect to safety protocols is going to be really important. And
it's going to be a collaborative effort. Everybody's really going to have to communicate with each other and have the plan A, the plan B, the plan C, because as we know, things are rapidly changing.
Yeah, and this also looks like a really interesting opportunity for sponsorship potential. The logos to direct people could potentially be decals on the floor with logos.
Absolutely, yeah, I know, and we're going to dig into sponsorship a little bit later in the program, but absolutely that this shows some prime examples of that.
Excellent. So tell me about some floor plans for physical distancing. So this reminds me, my husband and I are huge D&D fans, and this looks like a grid that we would use to plot out. You know, it's hard when you're in a fantasy role-playing game to figure out how far, you know, the villain is that you want to attack, and this is what this reminds me of.
All right, well, that's great. I mean, it has a positive association for you. That's great. But this is really a floor plan with a 6-foot grid dropped into it. And that's a best practice that we're recommending at Court and that I'll be doing for my clients as I start to work on floor plans for people for meetings. But this is a cocktail reception. But all the squares that you see there are 6 by 6. So it automatically gives you those visual cues that you need to space everything properly. So before you put any sort of furniture into the space, whether it's the hotel's furniture or rental furniture, you want to drop that grid in first. And pretty much all floor planning programs have the ability to do that.
That's great. It really does give you an idea to imagine how many people you can get in there while still maintaining safe protocols and physical distancing. You can even potentially share this with attendees in advance to reassure them too.
Absolutely. I think a lot of everybody's going to have to pre-plan everything. We're going to see less walk-ins and things of that nature. So the more that we can plan in advance, the lead time might take a little bit longer, but we can show people to make them feel comfortable. Hey, this is how it's going to look.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about designing a physically distanced meeting room. What are some ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an image here, yes, right behind us, that shows individual chairs with individual side tables. And I think that's really the trend that we're going to see. Individual spaces for people that are dedicated to them for during the entire conference. So that could also be cafe tables with a chair behind it, or hotel seating, 1 per 6-foot classroom style, a variety of different things. And we actually, I think, have some pieces here to demo. Yeah. So come on over this way. We brought a few pieces into the studio for this.
So tell me about this chair.
Yeah, so that is our tech tablet chair, and I love this piece because it's really an all-in-one. We have, I don't know if the folks at home can see this, but if you want to point out, there's an area where you can plug into power. So the chair can be plugged into power at the venue, and they can charge their devices without having to look for an outlet or a charging station in the venue. Sit on the floor airport style, as we've all done.
And then it find out with like 3 people.
And then it has the swivel tray table that somebody can put their device down, a cup of coffee, even a boxed meal. And then one of the other things I love about it is that it's got a cubby underneath. So you can put your things, and then we don't have to worry about trip hazards in the aisles and things like that. So these could be spaced properly apart, and I think they're going to be a hot commodity when we do start getting back to in-person meetings.
Sure, this reminds me of being in a college seminar. And one of the things I love about this table is that it's metal, so you could put a logo or any sort of signage on here.
Yes.
Potentially assigning seating is going to be important for us so that people have a dedicated seat. They know exactly where to go. They're not milling about the room. And you could just put somebody's name directly on this tray table.
Yes, definitely. Those tray tables are brandable through Court. So yes, you could put somebody's name on it. You could put a sponsor logo on it. Lots of possibilities.
And then we've got this table here, which is awesome. It's pink. I love it.
Yes, I guess, I don't know, pink is like a thing today, right? But yeah, so I chose this fuchsia table, but we have this 30-inch table in 14 different colors. So it's pretty versatile, and it can also be branded and customized. But this is another idea for individual seats at a meeting. So again, you can put the hotel banquet chair in front of one of these. You can just wipe it down really quickly in between sessions if you need to sanitize. And I actually have a client who I'm working on a meeting set for in January. For 150 people. They are ordering 50 black top tables, 50 blue tops, and 50 white tops.
What are the different colors for?
So their idea is that they're going to call people up for meal times and breaks on a staggered schedule.
Okay.
So they'll say, all the folks at the blue tables, now it's your turn to get up. So, that's the kind of
color.
thing.
Anybody who knows me knows I love color coding.
There we go. Yes, I think all planners, I think we all are type A and love color coding. So that speaks to us. So that's just an idea of how you can also manage the flow.
Sure, and reduce the number of people waiting in line for food service at any given time.
Yep.
And then we've got this table. This is 6 feet.
Yeah, so this is our Ventura Cafe table. It also comes in a bar height, but it is 6 feet long already. So you know that people are properly distanced if you have somebody sitting in the middle of one of these tables. And so you can maybe keep them a little closer together the actual tables.
You know, it reminds me of like when you're watching home and garden shows, they talk about in open floor planned homes about using furniture groupings or sight lines to be able to designate different areas within the home. And I love the idea of using furniture instead of like stanchions, which can potentially be cold and uninviting, just using the furniture to guide the attendee through the space where they don't necessarily have to walk through some sort of weird queue.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges that we have as event designers and meeting designers is having the room feel still warm and inviting and not cavernous. I keep picturing hotel banquet chairs just spaced 6 feet apart and that being so everything in the entire room and it echoing. So using soft seating can help absorb the sound and give it a warmer feel. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but that's certainly something that we want to keep in mind.
Yeah. Yeah. We see some questions coming in. If you have questions, please feel free to put them in the Zoom chat or in the YouTube chat. We're going to get to them at the end of the program. So we're hoping that by going through the program that we'll address your questions. But if we don't, we'll get to this later. So tell us a little bit about physically distanced networking.
Yes, so we have a couple examples of that we can show as well. So this is what I like to call a sort of a networking pod. So we've got 4 individual chairs with 4 individual side tables, but the folks are facing in toward one another, so they can still mingle and network with each other and have a dedicated space for their food and beverage, their phone, things like that.
Yeah, one of the things I love about this setup is how each table is individual to the seat, and the seats kind of have these vertical barriers.
Yes, these happen to be our high back versions of our Endless collection here that are shown, and normally that would be 2 love seats, but it's modular, so we broke it apart into 4 chairs. But it does kind of give you that almost like cocoon feeling of safety with the high back on it.
But if somebody wants something a little bit more warm, do you have other ideas as well?
Yes, so this idea is another one that we came up with. It's using, again, our Endless collection, which is modular. It's a sectional sofa, and normally this might seat 4 or 5 people. But under these circumstances, now we would seat 2. And the little C tables that we actually had next to us when we were in the first segment of the program, those are being used in the center of the sofa, and then the 2 people sitting on either end. So again, they have a place to put their things down, their food and drink down, but they're properly spaced. And we'll talk about food and beverage a little more as we move on, but people can't wear a mask while they're eating and drinking. So we have to really be careful when we're doing cocktail receptions to make sure that people are properly distanced.
Excellent. And I know not a lot of our attendees or members of MPI really do large-scale trade shows, but we do sometimes have the opportunity to recognize sponsors. And in the previous times, we used to do kind of 6-foot tables where people could do displays. But I understand you have some ideas about how we can still give that recognition to our sponsors or vendors with trade show booth design.
Yeah, so I personally don't work on trade shows for Court. We have a whole separate division for that. And if people need more information about trade shows, then certainly reach out to me and I can connect you with the right people. But I did think that these graphics were pretty instructive on managing flow. So you can see the floor decals and the signage, entry and exit points that are created with the greenery, again, a little more warm and inviting than, say, maybe stanchions, the hello in the middle and the goodbye on the outside, so people know how to flow through the space. So I thought that those were good examples of visual cues that could be applied not just to trade show booths, but to event spaces as well.
Yeah.
And then I think we have a photo example of almost like a little theater.
Yeah, I mean,
next.
I think that what we can do is take some ideas from the before times, if you will, and bring them into the new next.
Absolutely.
This looks really like a fireside chat, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like a little mini theater that you might see set up at a trade show where they have speakers that are on timed sessions throughout the day that people can come to the booth and talk. And I think that's something that could be adapted to a reception. You could offer your sponsors or your speakers the opportunity to do timed like little lightning talks or TED-style talks. This photo is from January, so it is before COVID.
Before times.
Exactly, but I think it's a good example that could be adapted and distanced, and you could have that kind of in one corner of the room and let people flow, kind of like rotate through.
I love that, and that's still a way to provide value and recognition for your partners at the events, and still allowing them to share their information with attendees. But so talking about food and beverage, that is something that's going to be a consideration as we move into the next phase of being able to host people in person. And we were able to, through a partnership with Dynable, provide a shared food and beverage experience today. We have a short video from them to be able to...
Yes, many of you are probably enjoying the meal that was delivered from Dynable earlier today. Everybody's enjoying the same meal that ordered from Dynable, which I think is really cool. And yes, the owner of Dynable, Mark Sorkin, put together a short video explaining what they do. And then we'll be back.
Hey, Greater Philly MPI chapter, Mark from Dynable here with a quick message for you all. First, I hope those of you who got a meal today are enjoying the spread created by Drexelbrook and this really cool new product from a local Philly beverage company made of avocado seeds, of all things. Second, thank you so much to Kelly and Nikki and the whole MPI team and the crew at Synergetic for the opportunity to make Dynable a part of this program as we all work together to, not only define the new normal, but to work together to create a better normal for everybody. Third, I've had the pleasure of getting to know a bunch of you over the past year or two as we worked on our prior product for Dynable. One of the things that I've learned in the meetings and events industry is that it may be a business, but I know for all of you, it's hospitality first. And that's a really important lesson that you all have helped me learn. So thank you for that. It's what inspired us here at Dynable to launch this new service called Virtual Catering just a few weeks ago. And it's been such an absolute joy to see how the community has embraced it as a way to, get back to more engaging events, more connected events, even when they're virtual, and eventually when they become hybrid. And yes, maybe in some cases, it helps you get back to charging for those events because, there is still a business to be run here, even though I know that's secondary to many of you. So the idea here is pretty simple. There's caterers out there who want to do business. There's events still happening, and the mandate for those events is the same, even when they're virtual. Highlight brands, help corporations share their message, help people connect, have a great time, connect over food. And out there's a big complex infrastructure of delivery services as well. So we figured we'd connect the caterers, the events, the delivery services, get those pieces together so that we can bring a catered experience right to your guest doors, no matter where they are. So I'm looking forward to meeting more and more of you as things continue, and see you soon.
Thank you so much to Dynable for explaining a little bit about your process. That's one of the things I thought was really special and unique about this particular event. One of the things that we're talking about as we recognize that virtual events are going to be a part of our ecosystem
for a while now. Yeah.
Right. And how do we make sure that we are engaging with our virtual audiences? And food and beverage is just such an important aspect of that. And I was at a seminar recently where we were able to get a coupon off of a Grubhub delivery, which is great because we were all eating at the same time. But it was a little discordant in the sense that we maybe weren't all eating the same meal or sharing the same experience. I really loved the idea of Dynable being able to create that uniform menu. And we actually have it here today. We were able to get it delivered to us, and I love this.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're able to brand it. Can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I don't know if everybody can see this here, but Dynable put a sticker on it recognizing all of today's strategic partners. So this is a great way to recognize your sponsors. Going to go to this camera. And it has the MPI logo on it, and it has my name on it, and it even has my dietary restriction on there, which is gluten-free. So they really took care of all of the dietary restrictions that people might have, allergies, things like that. And they were all delivered. Ours were delivered here to Synergetic today. Looking forward to trying it.
Yeah, me too. I was actually in the Zoom chat talking with our CMPs and CMMs, and they shared that there was somebody in there who had food allergies as well, and they showed that everything was kind of packaged separately. So that is definitely something in terms of ADA issues that we do need to be sensitive to: halal, kosher, gluten-free, all of those things. And you can still do that in a virtual setting as well as a live one. So, but let's talk a little bit about live events and eating. And again, this is the part where I remind you, neither of us are medical professionals. We do ask that you review the guidelines in your state and local municipalities, as well as the WHO and CDC, before moving forward to a live event and doing food and beverage.
Yes.
But again, assuming that we're going to be able to move to live events at some day in the future, what are some ways that we can still keep the COVID-19 considerations and design food and beverage stations to still make our guests feel comfortable?
Yeah, so food and beverage is most certainly one of the trickier parts of events with COVID considerations in mind. So we have to keep people spaced because they can't wear their mask while they eat and drink, as we mentioned. But Court has put together some best practices that we're sharing. And here we go. Here's a visual of our Posh Bars. We're actually sitting at our Posh Bars here at this news desk style here in the studio, but traditionally they are used as bars and food stations. We're recommending one attendant behind each with proper PPE, also the plexiglass shields that I mentioned earlier, and having the stanchions to separate the lines, the floor decals to keep people properly spaced. As far as menu goes, certainly, as with virtual events, consult with your AV and production partner to steer you in the right direction. Same thing goes for food and beverage. Talk to your catering partner, because they really have been thinking about this whole time and how they're going to execute. But generally speaking, we're going to see a trend away from buffet and toward plated, more so small composed plates at food stations versus, pick what you want
Sure.
From the station as you will. And I think for bars, we're going to see beer and wine and maybe batch cocktails that can be easily poured. No elaborate mixology at the
Right.
bar. It increases the amount of time people are going to wait in line, and also there's more touches to
Right.
it. So anything that's kind of quick and easy that they can grab and go, I think is what we're going to see.
Sure. And I think also bringing some of our training from the before times about sustainability, because we're going to go to a lot of single-use products, maybe making sure that we're using bamboo or other recyclable or compostable materials, because people really are going to want to have their food kind of safely delivered to them, but that does affect some of the sustainability practices that we had put into place before.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in that space of how do we deliver food to people in a safe way, but that still is maybe a little more elegant than the cardboard boxes with the handles. So,
Sure.
I'm sure that the companies that supply caterers with that type of stuff, they're going to be thinking about that and putting together some different pieces that, like you said, are hopefully biodegradable.
Wonderful. And so that is with respect to the delivery, but let's talk about seating. How can we design our spaces for socially distant dining?
Yes, so perhaps someone can wear their mask up to the food station or the bar, but once they go down, go to sit and eat it, then we have to think about how they're going to dine safely. So again, here, this is actually the Ventura table at the bar height, similar to the one we demoed earlier at cafe height, with a bar stool at either end. And again, this could be done with chairs at cafe height, but the table being 6 feet apart, you automatically know that they're spaced properly.
Right.
And this table may normally seat 4 to 6 people, but in the era that we're currently living in, it's a 2-seater.
Right. And I see that the one example shows florals draped across the table to kind of create that separate space. I love the
Yes.
idea of using something like that.
Yeah, that could be florals, that could be a number of other decor pieces or sponsorship signage, things like that. So yeah, a few different possibilities there.
And so this is if people are social, but what about singular dining?
Yeah, so you have to be mindful too of how people are arriving to the event. Some people may be coming as couples, some people may be coming as individuals. Really depends on the nature of the event. But especially for corporate meetings, you're going to need to offer people, again, that dedicated space. So here we have dinner for one concept, one bar stool at a high top table. They're clustered together though, so you can still have cross conversation and networking. But again, they have their own surface to eat and drink from.
Yeah, and I like that idea as well as we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's also incorporating people's networking styles.
Yes.
I think that introverts are going to really enjoy this. We're finally
Having their own seat.
right. We're finally addressing.
They're
the
not
needs
going to
of
want
the
to go
introverts.
back to the 10 tops.
Exactly.
The
And that
introverts.
was one of the questions we got beforehand, was reassuring guests and making them feel comfortable about attending. This idea that we can kind of protect a bubble for them to the best of our ability in a shared space
Yes.
is also something that can address that concern of attendees. And moving forward to how do we pay for all of this? Because we're seeing furnishings are going to become a lot more important. We can't necessarily just rely on what's available. We do really need to plan with intent. One of the questions we did get in advance was about in the virtual world, a lot of seminars and webinars have been free. We're seeing now that people are moving to a pay what you will model. Or setting different tiers for people who are VIPs versus members of an organization, or even offering discounts if you sign up if you're doing a series of webinars, to price accordingly. But I do think that as we move through to the next phase, that we're going to be seeing people charge for events because there is a value to it, especially if you're offering CEUs or other accreditation.
Yeah, it's still our job to deliver value to our attendees, whether it's virtual, hybrid, or in person, or a combination. And budgets I think are going to be upended a little bit, and where we're spending our money is going to shift. We have to think about the technological considerations, and we also have to think about safety. So those two things, I think, in addition to the content and the goals and objectives, are going to be right up there at the top in terms of budget prioritization.
Sure.
But I know a lot of our viewers today deal with sponsorships and need to worry about how are we going to underwrite all of these things that are happening.
Because if you think about it, we're going to have the same budget for fewer people.
Yes, right. So the per person cost may go up, even if you have less people. That's certainly one way to look at it. But the sponsorable items, I think, are shifting a little bit. The nature of sponsorships are going to change a bit here.
I agree. How can we recognize them? What are some ways we can put together value packages?
Yeah, so for strictly virtual, certainly we can have graphics in the background, on the hero bar, in the lower third graphics. Those are all ways to do sponsorship recognition from a logo standpoint. Also the waiting room today. If you joined the meeting a little bit early and you were in the waiting room, you probably saw the logos of Kalahari, our presidential sponsor, as well as all 3 of our strategic partners today. And then also we've done a couple of quote unquote commercial breaks today with pre-taped videos that people put together to show. And that also allowed you and I to move throughout the studio as needed as we moved from set to set. And then in person, we talked a little bit about this earlier when we were doing the demo, is, tabletops, bar fronts, things like that can be branded very easily, and you can tie your sponsorships into that. Also, the Plexi shields that Court is going to be offering will be brandable as well. So those freestanding ones, the ones that go on top of registration desks, food stations, bars, all of those are opportunities for sponsorships. And then I think giveaways. We're going to see all different types of giveaways now than we used to at events, and the swag bags are going to look very different. Maybe branded masks, hand sanitizer bottles, wipe packs with disinfectant wipes in them. So all of those things, certainly this is not a complete list, and I would be interested to hear what other people are coming up with, but this is just a preliminary list of ideas that we came up with.
Sure, and it seemed as though people with promo items were moving away from tchotchkes and moving toward things that were sustainable and reusable. And it seems like in this new Next that it becomes even more important. You could be wearing a branded mask there's a lot of continuation, not just at the event, but after. So in terms of providing value to sponsorships and to sponsors, there is that recognition.
And I think planners and sponsors are going to want to convey to attendees that, we all care about their safety. We care about their comfort level. And I think, actually, we have the fly-through to do, right? One more? Yeah, so to wrap this up, we have a fly-through of this space, everything that we've been talking about today, kind of moving through the space here. So here we have the networking pod. And you can see, of course, hand sanitizer stations and ample trash cans for waste disposal, the dinner for one concept and the 2 tops properly distanced at 6 feet here as well. And then, of course, heading over to the food stations and bars.
Yep. It's really interesting to see how all of these spaces kind of flow together. And I love the idea of combining something, there's a picture that was going around LinkedIn that had people, bowls of red, yellow, and green wristbands, to indicate how far people should stay away and what people's comfort level might be. I don't mind somebody getting a little bit closer to me versus please stay away.
Right.
And I love the idea of designing a room as well, where the room set isn't all just one thing, but also provides areas for people to address that comfort level. If they want to be alone, they can stand at the dining for one.
Right. There's a variety of different seating types that might tailor to each person's comfort level.
And one of the things I like about that as well is that for sponsorships, the ability to stand alone as a sponsor is very important. And it looks like there's a lot of opportunities for standalone branding where your logo is not necessarily just on a sign with like 15 other sponsors, although it's great for the lunch delivery because of that. But when you're in a physical space, you're able to, the plexiglass, the food and beverage can be different than the seating and so forth. So
you can still easily create sponsorship packages. It's just they're going to look a little different.
Yeah, right? and I know that it's a hard time financially for a lot of organizations, but there are others that are doing well. So if you're looking for natural sponsors for your events, as we move to new phases, different states are going to be in different phases of openings. So a state that is welcoming business for events, their DMCs or their CVBs might be natural people to reach out to. They're going to want to let your planners know that they're available and open for business.
Destinations are going to be very motivated to attract people.
Yeah, and
I'd imagine when it's safe.
Right, and I'd imagine food delivery services like Grubhub, Dineable, they might be able to offer sponsorships as well as natural outgrowths.
Right.
And again, companies that are doing well or have reasons to get their name in front of event managers.
Yes, yeah. And to my point earlier, with sponsors and planners wanting to make people feel comfortable, I think that, being on the supplier side, it's on us as suppliers to make the planners feel as though they can be confident in ordering from us and working with us, that we're adhering to the proper protocols and that our products are safe to use. And on the flip side, the planners need to make sure that their internal stakeholders are comfortable and confident in moving forward, as well as the attendees. You want people to feel comfortable and confident registering for that event and getting in the car. to drive to that meeting or eventually on the plane to fly to that meeting. So, I think it's incumbent upon all of us to think about ways that we can inspire that confidence. And I hope that today's program has given people some food for thought and ideas that they can adapt to what they're planning for the future.
Sure. And again, it just reminds me that we're going to be looking to our vendors and our suppliers as strategic partners as opposed to just people who supply our things. We're going to need to thinking holistically about every touch point from the moment we conceive of the event all the way through to execution and conclusion.
Yeah.
So we definitely want people to be asking us questions. We're going to kind of start taking questions now.
Yeah.
Kelly, we did have somebody who asked about the chairs, running electrical to chairs,
Yes.
and whether people use your equipment or not. That's always been something that we've seen as a challenge, getting electricity to the center of the room.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So that is something that you'll need to talk to your venue partner about. Typically, if there is an in-house AV company, such as a PSAV at the hotel or whatnot, they're the ones who are going to manage the access to the power. So that's a conversation. We provide the specs and the number of amps and all of that, and you can daisy chain a certain number of them together on one power line. So there are efficiencies that can be done with those, but that's ultimately going to be us supplying the right electrical information and the planner kind of translating that with the in-house provider of power.
Yeah, I've also seen some venues where they have electrical plates and it's scattered throughout the center of the room. That's something that I've seen in newer properties.
Yeah, depends on the property and maybe how old it is.
Yeah. And then we had another question about the formula for square footage for food and beverage and theater style. Well, we need to communicate those specs to the hotels. And I don't know that I have that formula. It seems like information about how many people you can fit in a room are changing. And
Yeah, I don't know that there's a hard and fast formula for that.
Right.
The grid floor plan that I showed earlier, that's a perfectly rectangular space. As we know, not all event spaces are perfectly rectangular. But that floor plan, for example, was about 8,800 square feet, 8,900 square feet. We are recommending for a cocktail reception about 500 square feet for every 10 guests.
Okay.
So that would get you to about 175, 180 people. So definitely less than we are used to
Yes.
being able to fit into a space that large. So, that's something that I think, the venues are working on. And again, will be a collaboration between the hotel or venue, the planner, and any suppliers that are coming in to provide seating and tables, linens, things like that, to kind of come up with the right plan for your specific event.
Sure. One of the questions that's come up, and I think it's something that I'm seeing in a lot of event manager blogs, how do we avoid people standing in crowds? How do we enforce social distancing? How do we enforce that people are wearing their masks? What can we do contractually with venues to ensure that they're following these guidelines? And I'll be honest, I don't know that we can, right? Do you have any
Well,
thoughts on that?
I mean, yes, ultimately you can't physically control where someone moves, but I think that the big principles we need to keep in mind are communication, communication, communication. So
Sure.
we need to communicate with people about what to expect when they arrive before they get there and how things are going to be set up. To your point earlier, if you can provide a floor plan to people, that's great. And there are ways without people really realizing it, using signage, using floor decals, using things like drape and greenery and stanchions to create a one-way traffic flow that you want as the planner. The guests may not necessarily realize that they're being kind of herded through the space in a certain way, and you don't want them to feel like they're being herded like cattle, but there's a lot of ways that you can take an individual space and decide, this is how we want people to flow through and create the floor plan that allows for that.
Yeah, and I think I saw, it was posted to a Facebook group I'm a part of, and I think it was CNN, did a sentiment index that people are hesitant to go to live events in part because they don't trust other people to follow the rules. And I think that that's a very valid concern, and I think that us as meeting professionals should really keep that in mind. I think that if you're an association or if you're an organization that has members, even if you have a preferred focus group list, to maybe send out that sentiment survey beforehand and find
pull
out
them ahead of time.
Exactly, kind of find out what the taste for risk management is of your attendees and really determine what they think they're up for before you plan a live event. I think we've always talked about that, about the event is really goals and objectives, right? It's really not about you producing an event.
Right.
It's really about attendee expectation. And I think having an understanding about what their concerns are in advance will help you address them. And again, I'd say be really cautious about moving to live events. I mean, I'm an event planner
Yes.
and my job depends on it, but I
Yes.
do think that we've proven today that we can take a virtual event, create virtual engagement, create an elevated set, really provide that same value of an in-person event in terms of content.
Yes, in terms of content delivery.
Right. I think
Yeah.
that we really need to be asking ourselves about goals and objectives. Is the goal and objective of this event for networking? Can that be met virtually? If not, then I think that we need to be really cautious about understanding that some people will not follow the rules. Some people will. We're seeing these news articles all the time about people who refuse to be masked going into Trader Joe's. You know, there's
And I
just
think
nothing
though
to
too,
be done
as
there.
event planners, we have the ability to say, this is our event. If you would like to attend, you have to wear a mask. You know, that's the nice thing about a private event is that
Right.
if you're doing that and it's your guests, you can tell them this is our expectation for the event. So I think that's just, again, the pre-communication, the on-site communication when they arrive, reinforce the rules, you know, what you expect people to do and how you're keeping them safe so that they have an expectation and an understanding of what's going to happen. And, you know, there are certain things that are just better done live. So we have to proceed with caution for sure. And none of what we are talking about today has a timeline on it. You know,
Right.
we're not saying that this is what we should all be going out and doing tomorrow. It's really going to be based on, you know, what we're hearing, how things are trending, and our location. Different parts of the country may be able to move to live events sooner than others. So, you know, you know where you are and your organization's risk tolerance. So, you know, but this is all just meant to get the wheels turning.
Right, and provide some thought and ideas.
Yes.
One of the other questions, will table or chair surfaces have a material special spray or something that might repel particles or viruses so they won't have to be cleaned as much?
So in terms of manufacturing, you know, I'm not sure.
I mean, eventually, I wonder.
Eventually, that's
if there's
certainly
furniture
possible.
manufacturers out there, that might be something you want to get on.
Yes. So I know at Court, you know, from a new product standpoint, typically it's about an 18-month cycle from the time that we conceptualize a new product to the time it's actually available for people to deliver. So things are moving at a pace that I'm not sure how soon that's going to be
Sure.
available. But in the meantime, you know, these hydrogen peroxide-based cleaners that we're using and a lot of people are using, they disinfect within 5 minutes, is my understanding, and you can easily wipe them down. I think that, you know, you just have to be mindful of the surfaces that you have available to you, and have a plan in place with your venue and with your suppliers.
Yeah, I also like the idea of assigned seating. I think we were seeing some of that about that pre-event. Having assigned seating and only having one person sit at that chair might reduce the amount of times it needs to be cleaned. If you're the only person sitting there, then it might not need to be
Exactly.
cleaned as often.
Yes, and I think we're going to see that, you know, I think we talked about like tracks. So you may have sessions that repeat instead of just happening one time. And you have half the group cycling through a track and the other half of the group cycling through a different track. Maybe group A has lunch at 11:30, group B has lunch at 12:30, and everything is disinfected in between. So there's a lot of ways to think about it. You know, we're going to have to get creative, obviously, but that's what we do as event professionals. So I have no doubt
Excellent.
that we'll figure it out, but I think those are all things that, yeah, we have to keep in mind.
Sure, and then there was a question about Dynable being able to deliver locally. At the moment, yes, that they can only deliver locally, but they're working on national opportunities. So there might be other food partners and delivery partners in other areas of the state if you're not tuning in from Philadelphia in that region. Definitely reach out to your catering partners and see what they might be able to arrange and accomplish, because although Dynable is kind of that central hub, an individual
Yes.
caterer might be able to figure that out for you too.
So the caterer today is actually Drexelbrook, but Dynable is the kind of the vehicle for getting the Drexelbrook catering to all of us today.
fantastic.
So what they did was create a shared menu, but I do know that Dynable has the ability to create a shared menu in disparate geographic locations. So you can talk to them also about coming up with a model for your own event if it's in different cities.
Fantastic, and I just want to give a shout out because Drexelbrook was our MPI venue of the year. We recently had our award ceremony virtually,
Yes, yeah.
and they were our venue of the
They
year.
do a great job, so I'm sure everybody out there is enjoying their lunch, and I'm looking forward to having mine after this.
Yeah. One of the other questions was about contractually ensuring that a venue will honor all of their protocols. And again, I think that it just goes back to what you were saying, Kelly, about communication.
Have that conversation on an event by event basis,
Yeah.
a venue by venue basis. I think we're all going to see addendums. Every client is going to be sending their venues and their suppliers an addendum. They may request a vendor code of conduct and things like that. We're already seeing those things crop up. But, you know, I think you should think about what you want the venue to agree to and then you just have to have that conversation and see where it lands.
Yeah.
And see where, I'm sure that they will want to accommodate as much as possible.
We all want live events to come back as soon
yes.
as they are safe and reasonable
Absolutely,
to do so.
absolutely. So everybody's at the table is going to be motivated to make sure that everybody's comfortable.
Yeah, and I've always believed in not approaching them as adversarial, but again, looking at our suppliers and our partners as strategic partners who all have the same goals. I think you said it best, something about that the vendor is supposed to, or the supplier is supposed to take care of the planner, and the planner takes care of the attendees, and we
Yes.
all work together in that holistic environment. And our final question, if anybody has any others, I just want to remind everybody that this was recorded. It's going to be available for watching again after this. Also, we have our member of our communications team is going to
Yes.
create a series of blogs about some of the questions
As
that
of
have
tomorrow,
happened today.
Director of Marketing and Communications.
Yeah,
so
yeah. Which is my personal, as outgoing director of volunteers. I encourage everybody to sign up. This was all produced with volunteer effort.
Yes.
And it's one of the ways that you can keep your resumes active and put these things on your resumes, because virtual events are going to be really important. And
That's Nikki's plug for volunteering for MPI. So members that are watching, talk to us about volunteering
Yes, and if
with
you're-
both of our committees.
Yes, and if you're not a member, we have a lot of options and financial support for you to be able to become a part of MPI.
Yes.
And our final question was, what support are planners looking for from our hotel partners? And I think that we've kind of addressed that holistically. At the end of the day, we're looking for everyone to be a team. This doesn't happen in a vacuum. Events never did. I think that the event planner, I always used to call them the cat wrangler, that was my job, was to be the cat wrangler. And just keep everybody on track. And that communication, I think, as we move through virtual events, into hybrid events, into live events, is going to be even more important.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all in this together. We're all doing this for the first time. Today's program was put together with a lot of people's effort, and most of us were doing all of it for the first time ever.
Yes.
All of the partners involved. So, we hope that what we presented to you was compelling and inspired you to maybe try something like this for your next virtual event. But
And if you saw anything that didn't go well, we did that on purpose so that you can learn from our errors.
That's right. It's a case study. So no, we really appreciate everybody tuning in, and the only way out is through, as they say, and we're all going to get through it, and we're going to figure it out together.
Yes, and again, congratulations to our CMMs and our CMPs watching from our Zoom chat. Thank you again for joining us. We look forward to being able to recognize you live in person when we're able to meet in person again. For everybody watching on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. If you have additional questions, please feel free to share them. We'll do our best to address them in follow-up blogs.
Yes. And my contact information was put up on the screen at one point. I'm not sure if we can put it up again, but if anybody needs a one-on-one consult or conversation about any of this, there it is. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. Also, Instagram is a great place. My Instagram account is a great place to keep up to date on everything that Court is doing behind the scenes to prepare for in-person events again.
Yep. And if you're looking to elevate your next Zoom call from your bedroom into a studio, by all means, reach out to Synergetic. Talk to your AV partners. Anyone can assist you with this. It really was a lovely process. Synergetic was great to work with. And I love the fact that AV companies are pivoting to creating these studios in their warehouses to be able to allow us to be able to provide our members and our attendees with an elevated virtual experience. Thank you again all for joining us today. Kelly, thank you for your time and for your
Thank you, Nikki.
suggestions.
No, it was great being here. This was fun.
We look forward to seeing you all again at the next event.